Hey, I want to explain to you today how you can use Claude or ChatGPT, whichever one you prefer, in order to create prospect research sheets for each of the leads in your pipeline. And specifically, I want to explain how you can create a battle card with all the relevant information that you need in order to go into a sales call with your prospect and feel adequately prepared. And the important thing to note here is that really, if you think about it, Claude, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, all these AI tools are basically very large research engines, and they can help you disseminate and parse a large quantity of information very quickly and draw insight from that information and textually write it out. So that's why it's very easy to create sales assets such as prospect research sheets or battle cards using these tools. So without further ado, I want to get into it here. So I just came up with like an example, obviously a fake company here in terms of me selling ad attribution and tracking software, and I picked my prospect who's going to speak with me today is going to be Salesforce. Obviously, all hypothetical, but just doing this in order to prove a point. So, in order to create these sort of prompts successfully and create a battle card, first thing you need to do is establish a good baseline in terms of research. Because if you don't prompt the AI to do research on your prospect company, it will just hallucinate and come up with fake facts. And that's not something you want. So it's very important beforehand to tell it upfront what you're trying to do. So in this case, I put, for example, I sell ad attribution and tracking software. It has XYZ feature. It costs this much, and I put my target prospect to Salesforce, which is a large CRM company, and I want you to do research on Salesforce in order to help me learn in order to do sales conversion. So what it does is it does research in terms of actually preparing for the sales conversation. It goes online, it looks up the most recent data that is available, and it creates a file. So this is sort of the file you can create. It's sort of a brief. This is an initial, piece of information you can have on hand, and basically explains to you exactly, what are their advertising and marketing mediums, kind of what are their strategic priorities, what sort of pain points they're having at the moment. These are important to consider in our battle card, as well as some conversation hooks, competitive intelligence, and so forth. So you have this full brief right here. Obviously, very interesting, lot of information here, but maybe not as useful as you'd want in terms of creating a specific game plan for actually speaking to that rep at Salesforce. So once you've done this sort of research, the emphasis then shifts to actually creating specific components of the battle cards, such as the what sort of discovery questions are you going to ask in order to build the gap, what sort of pain points or is Salesforce experiencing that you want to lean into, and so forth. And I want to break that down in this one right here. I have a different one that I was using for this purpose. Let's see, right here. Yes. So now I want to shift the emphasis to how you actually create the battle card itself. So now we've done research, right? We've established the context for the AI to draw on. And then you want to shift towards actually creating the content, which then the AI will take and form the battle card. So the first one is actually creating the pain points. So you tell it, list 5 pain points that Salesforce likely has with ad tracking. And it comes up with these pain points. And this is again based off of research it's done that we established in the prior conversation. Then, furthermore, you can ask it to provide the objections as well as the natural responses that the Salesforce executives might have when I present my solution. And basically, it goes through, it raises those objections. These are pretty common ones that might come up. And the important thing to note here is that look how hyper personalized it is to your solution. It comes. It's basically a sales trainer in your pocket, and it helps you in terms of identifying, what are those key objections, and comes up with very specific responses. And these I just came up with, the ad tracking software, but if you put in your website and your sales documentation, it can pull from that and create very specific custom responses that you can either memorize or just make part of your battle card going into the conversation. So, as I know here, again, creating very specific, very thorough objections as well as example responses. And then this is a key point here. This is how you can use it in order to get the tool to in order to get the tool to create questions that you can use in order to build the gap. So, if you read Gap Selling by Keenan, basically it goes over the point in terms of you wanting to create urgency in the mind of the buyer by creating a large gap from where they are now and what the pain is if they don't address this problem. So, these sort of questions are pain points that you can ask, that you can bring up in the conversation, and helps to accentuate that gap. So, for example, here, if your CMO asks you to cut 20% from your digital ad budget but maintain the same pipeline contribution, would you know exactly which campaigns to cut without just guessing? Or would you be making decisions based on proxy metrics you don't fully trust? So, the urgency in that situation would be, making sure that the CMO has the right numbers on hand, which might be something that the Salesforce executives are interested in. So that's kind of the point I'm bringing up here, is that you can create very clear questions, very hyper specific, hyper personalized questions that will inform your knowledge in terms of what sort of questions to ask, as well as building that gap. And then another important point here is creating proof points. And these are basically, this is more of a recommendation. I just threw it in here because these are sort of things that you could create, and these sort of assets or other sorts of things that we can help you create in order to use as proof in order to get the Salesforce executives interested. So basically, the point here is that you can create these sort of sales assets as tools that can be furthermore used in the presentation. It sort of recommends which one to use based on the particular situation. So now I want to bring up a different set of points here in terms of creating the prospect battle cards itself. So really what you can do is, if you just went and did the initial research and then, went through, got the pain points, got the objections, and created the questions and the proof points, you could create a pretty good battle card with that in and of itself. And I'll demonstrate the full visual battle card at the end of this presentation. But also, I want to demonstrate a couple other things that you're able to do using Claude. Like, for example, it can do research and identify very particular questions that would come up during a conversation in terms of demoing the SaaS. So, for example, one strength of the ad tracking software might be its effectiveness in terms of measurement. So you can ask AI to do research in terms of looking through ad campaigns and discovering, what they may be likely struggling with in terms of doing measuring effectiveness. And, it'll come up with some suggestions, and it'll do research, it'll come up with suggestions. And you can even ask it to cite its sources in terms of telling you where did it pull these sorts of things from, and it can give you that. And basically, what the point I'm trying to drive towards is you have to really realize that AI is a very large tool that can help you do research and create documents, create assets. That's where AI kind of shines, and that's what you should be kind of using it for. In, for example, creating prospect battle cards. So another point, why the buy versus build argument that comes up when you're doing prospecting for SaaS. Why would they buy ad tracking software instead of building it themselves? And it can help you come up with some clear arguments in terms of why they shouldn't do it. Like for example, they would need a dedicated team that would be just responsible for doing ad platform integrations, engineers that are not building these specific capabilities that are associated with Salesforce. So you can see how personalized and how specific the responses are that it gives. A couple of other examples here. I won't go into depth too much, but you can see how clear it gets, how specific it gets with numbers in terms of actually creating these sorts of documents. And final question here, and I'll get into the actual creation of the asset itself. Mapping out what would happen when a company like Salesforce tries to track attribution across 20 ad channels, what breaks and what gets missed. This would be an important point when you're trying to identify those pain points if you're selling the attribution software. So this is an either question that you could ask them, or it's knowledge you would have beforehand, and you can create associated questions in order to sort of create that gap. So, for example, it goes over specific problems such as data fragmentation, identity resolution, and this can be due to multi-platform, interactions by prospects, as well as conversion feedback loop delays in terms of how quickly do SDRs, demos, how does that occur after someone has filled out a form that they saw on an ad. So you kind of get my point. My point is you will get a much deeper insight into the customer process, into what the customer's pain points are, without having to do a huge discovery call with them beforehand. And furthermore, you can demonstrate your knowledge very quickly and very effectively through these tools without wasting a whole lot of time in terms of actually doing the research manually yourself. So now I want to go through at the end here, I want to go through how you can actually create these battle cards. So I created a small template here. Basically, it has things such as, company snapshot, key pain points, common objections plus responses, discovery questions, stakeholder map, and, proof points, personalization hooks, and email openers. If you're doing this with lead gen and you haven't gone the meeting yet, you can use these sort of email openers in order to show you did personalized research on the lead. So it will create a full battle card with you with all those elements included, and it will present the file right here. So as you can see, a clear company snapshot, clear pain points specifically related to the ad tracking solution, common objections plus responses, strategic discovery questions, very specific questions based off of their very specific environment, and based off of their customer journey, what the priorities are based off of the stakeholders. And you can, if you know who the stakeholders are, you can make that part of the document. Proof points, what case studies can you bring up? Like for example, what a case a point in terms of how you helped a different enterprise SaaS company, which was a similar profile to Salesforce. Let's say you helped HubSpot, for example, just throwing out a name out there. These are proof points as well as a case study, and we can help you create these case studies if you're interested. And furthermore, personalization hooks. What these are based off of research, and you can clearly should, like when you're talking to the prospect, you can mention these things and it shows that you've done your research. And like for example, they made a $10 million annual investment into Dreamforce, and you can ask how did it impact their ability to close deals over the prior 3 to 6 months. You can note, for example, that they've made heavy LinkedIn investments into B2B, and how you can explain how your solution helps address that. So these are very relevant hooks that you can bring up in the conversation. And then these are specific emails that you can create for your solution if you're doing lead gen and you want to use AI in the process. And really, you can do this is a full document. You can do other things, like, for example, that customer journey. You can map out a full customer journey. You can visualize this. If you're more of a visual learner, you can ask AI to create this in a visual format. For example, using images, infographics, and so forth. For example, what's it called? That tool with Microsoft PowerPoint. Visual graphics if you're more of a visual learner. But you can churn out these. If you know how to prompt correctly, you can churn out these battle cards and have very specific, hyper relevant information that you can use as part of your sales process when you're speaking to that particular customer. And with this, you hopefully can increase your conversion rates and make your sales process that more efficient. So I think overall, the takeaway from this video, thanks for sticking around to the end, is basically AI is a very helpful research tool, and it can do a ton of research for you and create very relevant textual content that you can use in order to create assets such as prospect battle cards. You can also do things such as creating competitor battle cards, comparing your solution to others. There's many different ways to address this, ROI calculators and so forth, and I'll be coming out with those videos soon. So I hope you got some value from this. If you're interested, feel free to look into the section beneath this video in order to reach out to me. And overall, hope you have fun implementing AI in order to create these battle cards for yourself.